All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Scienceholic's webinar, The Building Blocks of Life on Biochemistry. So welcome or welcome back if you've attended any of our previous webinars. Thanks so much for your interest in joining us today. We are very excited to welcome Dr. Nicolai Lehnert from the University of Michigan, and he'll be talking a little bit about his experience in the field and his work and research. All right. By the way, my name is Emma. I will be your host for today's webinar. All right, so I'm going to give a brief introduction for you all on who ScienceHolic is. So ScienceHolic is a student-led nonprofit that introduces intricate scientific concepts in a manner that is fun and comprehensible for teens. And we also provide volunteer and leadership opportunities for teens all over the world, including those who have English as their second language. And our main mission is to serve as a free resource for students to learn more about various STEM topics. And besides this webinar branch, we also publish seasonal magazines. We just published our 7th edition back in April of this year, which is a biology-themed magazine. So feel free to go check it out after this webinar. And now, without further ado, please welcome Dr. Lehnert again. Dr. Lehnert, would you mind giving us a brief introduction?
Okay, yeah, thank you, Emma. So, yeah, my name is Nicolai Lehnert. I'm actually born and raised. I grew up in Germany. And so if you look at my bio, you can see that the first stops are actually right in Germany. So I studied chemistry there in Düsseldorf, my hometown. And I also did my PhD studies at the University of Mainz in Germany. And then after that, I came to the States for the first time to do a postdoc. So I worked in Professor Solomon's lab at Stanford University for about 2.5 years. Went back to Germany for a couple of years, but then returned in 2006 to start as an assistant professor here at the University of Michigan. And by this time now, this is, of course, 17 years ago. Excuse me, I'm now a full professor. And, things have progressed from there, as you can see here in my bio. We don't have to go through all the details.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much. And attendees, this is just a quick question. Quick reminder to leave any questions that you have in the chat below. If you don't get to them right away, we will cover them in the live Q&A portion at the end of this webinar. All right, now let's get started with the questions. All right, so first, what is the focus of your academic and current career? And is that a challenging subject?
Yeah, we work on different areas in chemistry and biochemistry. One of the focuses is nitric oxide, or NO, right? It's a small molecule. It's a very toxic molecule, and it was a big surprise when it was discovered back in the 1980s, 1990s, that this toxic molecule is actually produced in your body. It's made in your brain, of all places. It's made in your cardiovascular system, in your arteries, and it has several important functions in signaling, right? So nitric oxide, for example, controls the arterial blood pressure in your body. It's involved in communication in the brains between the neurons when they talk to each other. Nitric oxide is one of the neurotransmitters, one of the molecules that exchanged in the process. And it's kind of curious that, through evolution, nature chose such a toxic molecule to actually have that important role. But the way that works is simply by using it at very, very low concentrations. And then on top of this, our body actually makes use of the fact that NO is toxic and uses it for immune defense. So your immune cells, for example, like your macrophages, your white blood cells, they produce this molecule in larger concentrations to kill bacteria, pathogens that have invaded your body, trying to make you sick, right? And so this is one way our body is trying to fight them off. So because of this, we also always call nitric oxide the double-edged sword, right? Because it has these signaling functions, but then it's also used in immune defense. And there are certain disease states where your body makes too much of it and then actually can make you sick. So it can go, both ways. And so we study, proteins or enzymes involved in making NO, in detecting NO, in signaling, and then nitric oxide is also an intermediate or metabolite in the nitrogen cycle, where different forms of nitrogen are interconverted in the environment. It shows up there as well. And we're interested in those enzymes as well. Is it a challenging job? Say, well, it's research, right? And so um, it's important here to realize what research is, right? Research does not mean that you're doing experiments like maybe in one of your teaching labs where you do something and you essentially know what the outcome is, right? When you do research, you're dreaming up something new or coming up with some explanation, and then you're testing your hypotheses in the laboratory and so on and so on. And so it's always challenging because you're kind of embarking into the unknown, right? You're trying to learn something or do something that nobody has ever done before, and that is the essence of research. So it is challenging, but it's also exciting, right? To learn something new about nature, about how your body works, about something, how the nitrogen cycle works. So what other topics people study in biochemistry, how different enzymes work, how they communicate, and things like this. And so doing science is really being an explorer, and I think that makes it exciting.
Yep, definitely. All right, thank you so much. Now, our next question, what sparked your interest in STEM fields and what inspired you to pursue a career in biochemistry?
So yeah, my inspiration to go into chemistry or biochemistry really came from high school, right? In my AP chemistry class in high school, the teacher was very good, and we did experiments pretty much all the time. We were a small class. There were only 8 or 9 students in that class. And so that was a good opportunity. And so the teacher would divide us up into subgroups, and then we would prepare solutions or put other things together. Then we would run reactions and look at them, and then we would learn some of the context and forth and back. And so it was really having this large experimental lab component that got me excited about chemistry, and that it's fun to do that. And it's of course sad when I have children myself going through school, and it's sad to see how oftentimes in school people make the science classes really boring
Mm-hmm.
because all they do is learn from a book. But in reality, chemistry, for example, or biochemistry, this is experimental science. This is all happening in a laboratory, right? This is where things happen, and learning the concepts is all important to understand what you're doing in the lab. But ultimately, it's an experimental science, and by taking that out, or really reducing this in the teaching, it's really not doing STEM a favor, right? Because I think it really disengages students, and it's sad how oftentimes schools have come up with a way to make the science classes as boring as possible. And so you could ask the question if I would have ever gotten into it, without that experience that I had in high school. And I don't know, maybe yes, maybe not, right? But when I came out of high school, I was like, oh yeah, chemistry was fun. It's really interesting. I want to learn more about it. So I went to university to study, and I studied chemistry and then biochemistry as well. I mean, chemistry, biochemistry are very closely related subjects, right? Biochemistry has a focus on biological systems, but it's still all of the chemistry is in there as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, definitely. Like, I feel like, students, they definitely need that sort of hands-on experience while they're in school in science. I feel like, they're not able to experience it all just like, looking at a textbook all day.
It's too boring, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. All right. Now, what was a memorable experience throughout your teaching and researching career?
Yeah, you can look at that from different angles. So, right, in research, a memorable experience is always when you learn something, you find something out, you discover something new. And there have been, of course, multiple of those moments over the years, as I work with my graduate students and we're doing research and we're finding new things. That is always very exciting. So there is the one part is the science by itself, right? And being able to I don't know, understand a new mechanism, find a new molecule, something that's scientifically exciting. But then the other part, of course, is also that I have a research group. So I work with graduate students, and seeing graduate students succeed, that is also really great success. And especially if you have maybe students who are talented, but for some reason they initially struggle a little bit for multiple reasons, maybe preparation, maybe just confidence, whatever it is. Maybe coming from a smaller school where they did not have a lot of opportunities to do laboratory work, then coming here into the PhD program, and then they kind of feel a little bit behind, and it also undermines their confidence. Anyway, seeing those students then, after 5 years to really live up to their full potential, that is also something that is really exciting for me as their mentor, to see that I'm able to really make them successful and get them to the point where they reach their full potential and succeed. And then, I always remember when they started, and then I see them, let's say, at their defense, when they defend their PhD, when they graduate, and, I keep in mind this, looking at them and say, wow, this is really a life-changing experience in a way, right? And so
Mhm.
that is also very gratifying to see that as well. So there's the scientific aspects of making discoveries, but then, of course, there's also the more human element in that, right? Working with the students and seeing students succeed, or let's say undergraduate students, right? Who then, after 4 years, they go off now to graduate school. They decide that chemistry is their thing and they want to get a PhD. And, having been able to, work with them and mentor them in that way is also very gratifying. And then they go off into great things themselves. So there are these different aspects, which I think it's something really special about my job in academia, is that I have, both of those, right? I have the scientific part, like working in a company, but then I also have the teaching part, but I have both of them together. And by working with graduate students, it's on a very high level, right? It's not like being a high school teacher. This is a completely different thing here. And we're working on, the knowledge edge, essentially trying to push forward into unknown territory, scientifically speaking.
All right. Yeah, thank you so much. It definitely sounds like a really really rewarding experience. All right, now this is sort of related, but what is your favorite part of working and studying in STEM?
Yeah, so I mean, working in STEM, or doing research, is essentially, there's different ways you can think about it. One is like solving a puzzle, right? Where you have all the puzzle pieces. Well, initially you have to find the puzzle pieces. So you do experiments, you design experiments, and from these experiments, you get an answer, but every answer is just a piece in the puzzle. But you don't actually know what the picture really looks like, right? So, if you go to the store and buy a puzzle, you can see what the picture is supposed to look like. And then you open the box and you have all the pieces. Then you can look at your pieces, you can look at the picture, and you can try to assemble them, right? Now, try to do that, but without knowing what the picture actually looks like, right? That's what science is, essentially. You get the puzzle pieces from doing experiments, then you design new experiments to get more puzzle pieces. Ultimately, you're trying to put them all together, and you're trying to, answer a question in science, identify a new protein, a new pathway, a mechanism, whatever you're studying, right? Um, make a new drug, whatever it is you're working on. So you can think about it like this, or you can think about it like, being like Sherlock Holmes, like a crime show. You like to watch crime shows on TV, and then you have the forensic people, and they find this little hair and this little piece and this and this and this, and ultimately they try to figure out who the suspect is, right? So you can also think about research being, like a crime show in that sense. You're collecting evidence with experiments. You think about what other evidence you could get, maybe by designing new experiments, and then ultimately you're trying to put the pieces together and figure it out. So it's challenging, like what Emma was asking in, I think, the first page. It is challenging to do that, but it's also fun. It is also very satisfying when you ultimately figure something out. It's very rewarding. And I think that this is generally fascination in doing research, and maybe in STEM, If you do engineering, it's maybe more about building something and getting that to work. And if you do science, it's more like learning something or figuring something out, how something works or how a disease works, or, finding a cure, a drug or something like this. But ultimately, it's always this idea of either finding or creating something new. I think that ties all of the STEM areas together and the way that you get there, right? So um, some things we do have practical applications as well. A lot of it is basic science, just trying to learn how things work, in the body and signaling. But we also work on some themes in clean energy conversion. We also have one project making safer catheters, where you suppress blood clot formation and infection. So we also do some projects that have more, practical implication. So that's one thing. Certainly, again, it connects to the research part that we talked about before, and then so that's one of my favorite things, and I think that's probably ultimately why I chose to go into STEM, is really for the doing the science. But certainly, as I mentioned before, it is also very gratifying to work with graduate students or undergrad students in the laboratory and mentoring them and overseeing their progress, right? Um, and really, what I do is I teach them how to do science, how to solve scientific problems, right? The process of collecting puzzle pieces. How do I get more puzzle pieces? How do I put them together? How do I interrelate them in a logical way? How do I ask the next question that then, moves everything forward, right? So there's the science, but I also really like working with the students in the lab and the teaching aspect of that. The third aspect is classroom teaching. That depends a little bit on the class. But when I get to teach my bioinorganic class, which is about metalloenzymes, which is an upper level undergraduate class, for example, that is something I really like to do and enjoy as well. Maybe general chemistry a little bit less. But, you have to learn the basics. In order to do more advanced things, you have to learn the basic things first. That is just, the way how you build up your pyramid of knowledge, is that you start from the bottom, and the basic things are not always the most interesting, but as you progress, it gets more and more interesting.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that the puzzle analogy. You have the pieces, but you don't know what the puzzle looks like. I've never thought about science that way. All right, so now moving on to some more general questions on career paths and general advice. Now, what does your typical day look like as a professor?
Well, I don't think I have a typical day, right? In my job, I do different things every day. Might work on, a publication. So writing is one aspect, writing publications, writing grant proposals. I might be doing that. On another day, I meet with my, students in my research group. I go over their progress and discuss their data. On another day, I teach. But there are also days where I have to, do committee meetings and other kind of service work. So I don't really have such a, typical day. Every day is different. During the semester, certainly the classroom teaching kind of provides more of a structure. So for example, in the fall term now, which starts in 2 weeks, I will teach general chemistry. That means Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 1 to 2, I'll be down in the lecture hall. The hour before I will prepare, and then there will be, meetings with the teaching assistants and things like this. And I'll try to kind of organize my week around the teaching assignments. During the spring, summer, when I don't do classroom teaching, there's more flexibility, and I spend a lot more time working with the graduate students then, right? So yeah, I don't really have a typical day in that sense, which is also one of the nice things about being in academia now specifically, is that, there is more things going on and there is more flexibility, right? I mean, I don't have a time card, right? I don't stamp in, I don't stamp out or something like this. I have things that I have to do that I need to get done, and I do them, to the best of my ability whenever, I can. So I don't have a typical day.
Great, love it. Thank you so much. All right, now what is your advice that you would give to high school students who are considering a career in the STEM fields?
Yeah, I mean, one of the most important things I think is for you to figure out what you're really most interested in, right? I mean, that is really the first thing. Is it, I don't know, is it engineering? Is it chemistry? Is it physics? Is it math? Is it more health related? From biochemistry, then you go to biomedical science to medical science. So there is kind of a continuum there as well, towards medicine. There are different areas, and I think it's important to find out what you're most interested in. Of course, depending on what high school you are in, your science education may be better or worse, right? As we discussed before. And so sometimes uh, high schools are not good at doing that. Maybe the chemistry or physics classes are not very good. Maybe they don't have an AP class. But when you get to college, you have kind of a second chance to do that, especially in your freshman year. You have to take a lot of the basic classes, basic chemistry, basic physics, math, engineering. So you have a chance, if high school didn't provide the opportunity to kind of figure out at least kind of a direction, what you're really interested in, then you also have a chance um, to do that when you start in college. And hopefully in your first year, you're able to figure out what gets you excited. I mean, that's really, I think, the most important thing, right? And then, of course, once you figure that out, you should go into a laboratory and actually start doing undergraduate research um, in that area, right? And that's really what gets your studies to the next level. There is the classroom teaching, there is the teaching labs that you take, but that's all just, in my opinion, that's all just supplementary. And really, where students really learn how to do things is, undergraduate students, when they join a research lab and start doing actual science side by side, with graduate students. And so a lot of the times, a lot of my undergrads, I pick them up in their sophomore year after they take some of the basic classes, the basic labs, and it gives you some time to figure out. Of course, it's not terminal, right? You can always change your mind. You go and say, oh, I want to do, I don't know, biochemistry. Then you join a lab for one semester, you work there, and you're like, oh my God, I can't do this. Then you go find something else, right? But really, I think one of the most important things is to really figure out, what you're excited about and what you love to do. Because you're going to do that the rest of your life, right? And if you enjoy what you're doing, um, then sometimes I don't even feel like I'm working, right? Because I like what I'm doing. It's really important to find the things that get you excited and that you find satisfying or fulfilling, and then study this and work in these areas. I think that's what you should do. And you can start in high school, but it may not always be possible. So you can also, especially your freshman year in college, is really a good time to try things out and cruise around a little bit, and then kind of start to kind of hone in on what your interests are. Taking AP science classes in high school is certainly an advantage because you can sometimes test out of basic science classes in college. So, for example, if you take AP chemistry and you come to Michigan, you can test out of general chemistry. So they give you an assessment exam in the beginning of your freshman year. And if you master that exam, you don't actually have to take general chemistry. You can straight go to the next class, which is organic chemistry. So you can save yourself some of the basic science classes if you can get AP chemistry, AP physics, in high school. But again, that may not always be possible. But if it's possible, this is a good opportunity, right? And you can jump some of the basic classes, and then you can immediately get to higher level and maybe more interesting classes as well. So there are some things you can already do in high school to prepare for college. It depends on, again, what your high school offers. It depends on how well you already know what you want to do. Some people know more, some people don't, and so you have to develop things. Everyone's different, right? And so you have to find, your pace there as well. But those are some of the things maybe to keep in mind, as you will go through maybe your last year or 2 years in high school and preparing for college.
All right, thank you so much. Yeah, definitely our a majority of our audience members are, high school students. So I think that's definitely really helpful advice. Thank you so much. All right, and now what kind of a student would you think would be a good fit for biochemistry, and how does one start working towards it?
I I don't think there's a specific kind of student. I think that everyone who's excited about science can do science, right? And you find what you're good at, right? Some people really like microbiology and working with bugs and things like this, and other people do synthetic chemistry, and depending on what you like to do and what you're good at. But I don't think there's that specific kind of student. I think it's something everyone can do. And really, I think if you're excited about it, then you learn it how to do it. That's not really a problem. In terms of how you start in biochemistry, when you come to college and you look at the majors, right? There's a chemistry major, biochemistry major, physics majors, engineering majors. Every major has a curriculum. And if you look at the curriculum, it tells you what are the required classes, right, that I have to take for this major, what are the elective classes. Oftentimes, they even give you kind of like a mock 4-year plan. Okay, first semester take this, second semester take this, and then this, and then this. So they kind of give you an idea how you could do it. You don't have to do it like that, but at least it gives you something to work with, right? And kind of how to think about what kind of classes. Yes, I should take general chemistry before I take organic chemistry, not the other way around. It doesn't make any sense, because you need to learn Gen Chem first before you do organic chemistry, or maybe you can test out a Gen Chem, go straight to organic chemistry. So then you have to arrange your schedule correspondingly. And then also you have an academic advisor when you come here as a student and you're interested in chemistry or biochemistry or biomolecular science major, which are the 3 majors my department has. You have an academic advisor, so you meet with that person and they also advise you, what classes you should take in what sequence, and how you should arrange your class schedule. So there's a lot of help there. It's not like, you show up here and you say, oh, I'm interested in biochemistry. And it's like, okay, what am I going to do now? Right. So there's a lot of help available once you get to college. Um, Again, with all the majors, they have their predefined curricula, so you can look that up. They have academic advisors that help you put together, your class schedule for every semester, and they help you plan out what you need to do. Or, if you decide to change majors, which also happens, you say, oh, I want to be a chemistry major, so I follow that curriculum. And then in your sophomore year, you're like, nah, maybe not. I want to go to biomolecular science. Then you sit down with the advisor and then they can go over the classes and they can say, oh, you fulfilled all of those requirements, but you still have to do this. And these are the other things you should do in order to, get that degree instead of the, let's say, chemistry degree that you had initially planned for, or something like this. So you're not left alone in that regard at all. You don't have to, worry about that much. So I say that's one thing. Let me see. Anything else that's important? It is certainly a little bit overwhelming still in your first year, right? It's a big change going from high school to college. Things are just working differently. You're really now responsible for yourself. In high school, there's more teachers taking, care of you. And in college, you kind of more self-responsible now. And, you have to go and find the academic advisor. They won't find you. So you have to, find the resources and use them. So you have a lot more responsibility. And all of this can be a little bit overwhelming. But then the other thing is you're not on your own either, right? So you're not the only freshman student starting in, I don't know, 2024 interested in biochemistry, let's say. There's a whole bunch of other students who also have the same, at least when they start, maybe the same career path or the same idea what they want to do for their major. And so, you also support each other in that way. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people say that the first year is definitely the hardest. And once you get through your freshman year, um, is really when the journey begins. You know how to do everything. And then, as I mentioned before, it's really good in your sophomore year, start research in the lab, right? And then, that's really when you're on your way and, the journey begins. So the freshman year is a little bit of a challenge. If your parents went to college, they can certainly help you a lot. If you're first generation college student, then that makes it a little bit harder because you don't have any real guidance maybe from home. But then again, take advantage of what the college offers to you in terms of academic advisors, talk to other students, talk to more senior students, right? That can also be very helpful. Um, so those are all kinds of different pieces of advice. Don't hesitate to go talk to your professors, right? It's a little bit different situation, especially oftentimes in the the fundamental classes. They're very big, right? And again, it depends on where you go, what university, what college. There are certainly smaller colleges where you maybe have more of that high school feel. You can take general chemistry and there's maybe 20 other students in the class. But here at Michigan, the section of general chemistry I teach, there's 400 students in there, right? So it's impossible for me to really get to know students unless they make an effort and come to my office hours and they talk to me. And so, professors like to talk to students. So go and talk to your professors as well, right? Especially, if you just start, first couple of weeks in, you have some doubts, go talk to the professor, talk to the TAs. Usually graduate students, they have been through that experience as well. So don't hesitate to ask for help, right? When you feel overwhelmed and you maybe not exactly sure what classes to take or what to do, just ask for help. It's completely normal in your freshman year that happens.
Yep, thank you. All right, so now we are going to the live Q&A portion of the webinar. So if anyone has questions, y'all can enter them into the chat. Yeah, so Dr. Lehnert, I'll start with sort of like one of my personal questions.
Yes.
So since for our audience members who are mostly high schoolers, do you have any sort of recommendations for any like extracurriculars or programs that we could involve ourselves in if we happen to be interested in chemistry related sciences?
I mean, you can certainly volunteer also at a university, right? So I sometimes have high school students in the summer who come and work in my laboratory for a couple of weeks, 6 weeks usually. And so there is even an opportunity for high schoolers to kind of get a college preview, in that way. You have to certainly take the initiative, right? So you have to see, is there maybe a university or college close to where you live, right? And then you can look at the website, all the faculty have their profiles on the website. You can see what kind of research they're doing, maybe something that interests you, and then just, email them, right? And send them an email and ask if there are any opportunities. And so there are these kinds of things you can do as well. Requires maybe that you have a pretty good idea what you want to do, right? Not everyone is at that stage, but it certainly it helps in terms of just familiarizing yourself how things work at college. Then when you come to a lab, like a student comes to my lab, right? In the summer, there are graduate students there. There are other undergraduate students there. There are lots of people. You can ask lots of questions, how things work, right? So that's another opportunity, and in some cases, even in terms of preparing your college application materials, right? You can then ask those students to maybe read over your essays or something like that. So you can do things like that as well. It's not always easy to get these internships, right? Because for a high school student to work in my lab, there needs to be very good supervision because we want it to be safe, right? The high schooler has to be safe. The university has a ton of regulations to also make sure that the high school students are safe. So there's all kinds of things we have to do, and it's very involved. So there has to be essentially a dedicated mentor, and that means that there's a limit, and never take more than one, essentially, right? And that's the capacity. So there are opportunities, but they are a little limited, and so you might have to send in a bunch of emails and see, and it may not work, right? But if you're interested in chemistry or biochemistry or engineering or physics or whatever it is, give it a try, is what I would say. If you can't find anything, no harm done, right? But if you find something, that would be great. And then yeah, it's also not, you don't make a commitment for life there as well, right? So I had students, high school students, come to my lab and work, in my lab on a chemistry theme, but then they would go to college and they would become engineers, right? It's not like by doing that internship, you now committed yourself to becoming a chemistry or biochemistry major for life, right? You're just doing a research internship and you're using that as information that maybe guides, what you're most interested in. Maybe you really enjoyed it. Maybe you thought, it's not the right thing. It was good, but it isn't the right thing for me. And maybe I'd rather be an engineer, something like this. But oftentimes, it's hard to know until you really do it. And that's the same with doing, when you're in college and, I mentioned a couple of times, do research, join a lab. Again, this is not terminal. You can join a lab, you can work there for a semester, you can find out, oh, it's not the right thing for me. I want to do something different. I had certainly undergraduate students as well working in my lab who then, say, oh, it's really not the right thing. I think I want to rather do X, and it's fine. And that's totally fine, right? You have to find your way. And these experiences, they can just help you to either confirm, yes, this is what I want to do, or no, this is not what I want to do. I'll keep looking. I want to do something closer to medicine or something more chemical engineering, not chemistry. I don't know, whatever it is. You have to ultimately find that yourself, and these experiences can all help you to figure out, what really makes you tick and what you're really most excited about doing.
All right, that's great. Thank you so much. All right, now we have some questions in the chat. I'll start with Lisa's comment, since she has a two-part question. So she says, thank you so much for joining us. I have two questions. One, what are some study methods or advice in general for biochem students? I used to have a very fun and outgoing chemistry teacher, but she left, and now my new chemistry teacher is a reading the textbook type of teacher. I really want to get good grades in biochem, so how can I make studying STEM subjects more fun despite not having a lab at home?
That is a very tough question. Yeah, that is a tough question that certainly my kids, I have two daughters, especially the older one, has been in a similar situation. Now, she was fortunate, since I'm a chemist, I could try to provide some context. I could say, oh, this is important because of this and this, or this relates to medicine in this way, or this relates to, energy, or this or this. But, if that was just for her being lucky, having a dad who's a chemistry professor, and you may not have that, not most people don't have that.
Mm-hmm.
You could try to maybe supplement. There's some good YouTube videos out there. There are, this organization here, ScienceholicMagazine. There are other ones who essentially make, short videos for the public, explaining scientific concepts. And one way maybe to take the kind of boring textbook learning and making it more fun is trying to see if there are, what does this knowledge relate to, right? And maybe explore a little bit on your own. But yeah, it's a difficult situation, and that's what I was saying initially, right? Oftentimes, high school teachers, they can, make or break students' interest in science. Making a class fun, like what happened to me, and then you're like all gung ho about it, or making it super boring, and then you don't really want anything to do with it, and that's really sad. But that's unfortunately the way it is. So it makes it difficult. Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, the only good idea I have, sometimes if you have the textbook, sometimes the textbook provides some hints. They have the little side boxes with like, oh, and did you know that? And then you could try to maybe just go on Google and look up a little bit, and maybe you find an interesting YouTube video where they talk about um, some of these concepts and how they relate to medicine or some other things. And maybe that helps to make it a little more interesting. But yeah, that is definitely a challenge. I know, and it makes it tough to study.
All right. Yeah. Thank you so much. Now, Katie has a question. How do I know which specific major is fit for me?
Yeah, really, it's the one that you're most excited about and that you most enjoy doing. I think is really go with your passion, right? And then, as I mentioned, part of honing in on that further would be then to volunteer in a lab. Or my older daughter was really interested in medicine, so she volunteered at a hospital just to see how it is to interact with patients, right? Um, or try to volunteer maybe if you have a company, a college, university close, maybe in the summer you could volunteer there so that you can get some practical experiences, right? And then again, when you get to college, you have the opportunity to go and do research in different laboratories. That's a good way to test the waters and really see what you most enjoy doing. Um, it's really not, unfortunately, it's really not sitting there and studying it from a book. Because as I said, science happens in a laboratory where you're doing experiments or building something in engineering, or running reactions or whatever it is. And so you have to get there. That's the point where you can really test the waters and see if this is really something you like to do or not. Right? You're not going to figure that out by looking at a book. More like by doing it. So the looking at the book gives you some ideas what you find interesting, but then whether it's now chemistry or biochemistry or more biomolecular science, or is it chemical engineering, right? Or is it, biomedical engineering, building like implants, for knees or whatever, right? What it really is at the end, I think really happens when you go into a laboratory and work a little bit in that area, or at least volunteer at a company. At least you can see what they're doing. Getting these practical experiences is really the most important thing, I think, and it's something that the high school should ultimately provide, but they don't always do that.
Got it. Thank you so much for your answer. Um, and Louisa has another question. So regarding internships, I have joined one relating to a biochem in cancer project, but most of them are university and PhD students. But I'm a high school student, and I feel like I'm very behind knowledge-wise and won't be helpful, making me very nervous about it. Is there any way that I can be prepared beforehand or be wary of?
Yeah, you should definitely talk to the people there and ask them if they have a recommendation, what you could do to prepare yourself for that internship. When I have high school students coming to my lab, we work out a research plan for the high school students, specifically taking into account, the kind of knowledge that they have at that point in their life, right? And of course, they're not as well trained as a senior undergrad student or, a PhD student. But when I let a high school student join my lab, I'll take this into consideration. And so I would hope that in this project that you're going to join, that also the people running this take into consideration, that you're a high school student, and so they take into consideration what you know, and and then kind of build from there. But I would definitely encourage you to ask them about that. That is exactly the question you should ask them. How should I prepare for this internship? Do you have any recommendations? Right? For me, this is hard to say because I don't know what they're doing, and they really the ones who should provide that information to you. And certainly in my case, I tell the students they don't really have to prepare anything. They just need to show up, being engaged, enthusiastic, and ready to get their hands dirty. Just figuratively speaking, of course, not literally speaking. We'll wear gloves in the lab and protect ourselves, but be ready to dive in and do something, right? And everything else will teach them slowly and steadily. And I hope that they recognize, of course, as a high school student, you're not going to be able to function on the same level as a senior undergrad or PhD students because you haven't had all that education yet that they have. And they should know that, and they should take this into consideration in terms of what they're asking you to do. But always ask questions. That is generally my recommendation, right? Go ask them about what can I do to prepare? What am I actually going to do there? What are going to be my responsibilities? Who I'm going to work with? And all of those are important questions to ask before you get started.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Thank you so much. Now, I think those will be all of the questions for now. And so I think we can go ahead and conclude today's webinar. And here are Scienceholic's social medias. You can go visit our website, Instagram, Discord, or email us with any questions at all. My co-host Sabrina has put our website and Discord invite links in the chat, so you guys can go access them if you are interested. And attendees, if you are also interested in working with us here at ScienceHolic, there are various ways that you can do so. You can apply for any of our 6 teams. I am part of the outreach team, but you can also participate as a content, art, or social media members. These are just some of our teams. And if you have an article that you would like to have published, you can also shoot us an email about that. Sabrina has also put all of those links in the chat for you all there. And here are our partners for this series, our chemistry conference. And so they collaborated us on this webinar series, as well as the magazines that will be coming out this September. So if you guys are interested in our chemistry themed magazine, please stay tuned for that. And that will be all for this session. Thank you so much thank you so much to you all for attending. And of course, a big thank you to Dr. Lehnert for your time. Thank you so much for coming to our conference. And yep, so everyone, please stay tuned for our next session today at 7 p.m. Eastern Time for Molecules to Medicine, the fantastic fusion for chemistry and pre-medical models on chemistry and pre-med. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, thank you all for coming and for the excellent questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Lehnert.